Welcome to Overcome Podcast. In today's episode, I'm going to talk with Carrie Chandler, former USA Judo number one in US on her prime year. And some of the stories that she is going to share with us today are absolutely fantastic. One of those is a completely shoulder replacement and back to the mats for the international level competition only after 10 weeks. So stay right there. We'll be right back. Welcome to Overcome Podcast, my friend Carrie Chandler. Thank you very much for joining today.
Thank you so much, Yuri. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Talking about Overcome, you have so many stories that I just couldn't invite you because you are like the personification of Overcome, right?
Yes.
In many ways, in many ways.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So very excited to have you. I was actually just watching one of your matches in 2007 London, where
Yes.
you won
It's funny.
a beautiful
Go ahead. Yeah.
beautiful Uchimata, and it was a counter.
Oh, okay.
It was
Okay.
beautiful.
It's funny, since we're talking about overcoming, that tournament for me, I had to overcome a lot at that tournament. It was just such an awful memory. When I was competing, I started off at 57 kilos, which is 125 pounds. And I started judo older in life. So I started and I was 16, almost 17. My dad had a small judo school and he taught judo. So I knew what it was my whole life. And I think I did it for like a year when I was 5. But then I stopped. And I restarted again one day when I was in high school. I went with him. So I really, to me, I started when I was 16. So anyway, I was 57 kilos first. And I was number 2 in the country, but of course, when you're number 2, you want to be number 1. And I couldn't beat this girl in front of me, Valerie Gote. She was just better than me. So I decided to cut down to 114, which was a really hard cut for me. I'm 5'6", and I was probably always around 60 kilos. So it was 8 kilos I was losing, which is just absurd for a girl, especially. But I would just cut a lot of weight and that tournament, man, I cut so much weight. I didn't eat for 5 days before I fought.
Wow.
It's not like when you watch Survivor, and well, that's a bad example, but we've been watching a lot of Survivor later. It's not like when I think I could not eat for 5 days. It was not eating for 5 days, but having to work out twice a day with plastics on, like during those 5 days, and sweating and like
crazy.
Man, I felt so bad. I remember taking probably the first ever selfie, because back in 2007 that wasn't a thing. I remember I was in the stands and I took a picture. I had a camera and I like turned it around and took a picture of myself because I wanted to remember, like, don't ever forget how bad you feel right now, because like you did this, you didn't do a good job cutting weight. And really, it's like I did a pretty good job cutting weight. I was just cutting much too much weight. So I just remember burning in all my matches. I could just barely stand up, and I had a really serious shoulder injury. My arm would go out of the socket and I would put it back in. And during that tournament, the British Open, the only other match of me online is in the semifinals. I was fighting this girl, and during the first exchange, I armbarred her and she tapped. And she did this to me the week before in Belgium too. She tapped and then she told the ref, "Oh, I didn't tap.
Really?
Or she did this.
Well, that's
yes,
terrible.
It was
cheating.
so annoying. Yes, it was totally cheating. And so she did it again. And I said to the referee, like, she tapped, and she just tapped me once hard. So in judo, you have to tap twice. But if you're getting armbarred or you're getting choked and you tap once hard, you're tapping. You're submitting. The ref will call it like you're giving up. And so it's a dangerous game, but it's a really local thing that some people do. So anyway, she was doing this move to me, and she tapped during the very first exchange of the semifinal. And I'm like, oh, thank God, like, quick match. And then, of course, she says she doesn't tap. I'm telling the ref she tapped. I'm asking the side ref, come on. And she was British, and she was like, oh, not again, And she was all like, because it had just happened the week before in Belgium. So anyway, they don't call it. So now this very quick match turned, of course, into a war. And during the match, my shoulder came out of the socket twice, and it was awful. Like, she came in for this attack. It would come out all the time, and I can't remember quite. She did something. She came in for an attack, and I fell. When I put my arms out, like, it came out, and I was like, oh, and you could see me during the match. I'll send you the link after. I put it back in. So I put it back in, and I kept fighting, and then we go into overtime. And, like, the first exchange of overtime, I tried this kataguruma. It came out again, but it popped right back in. And then finally I won, like, deep into overtime. So it was a rough day. It was rough, but I overcame, and I
Absolutely,
I won the match,
and that was 2007, January 2007.
Yeah.
And on the same year, you won the U.S. National Championship in Miami.
Yes, I did.
So that's pretty
that was
amazing
great.
because that was in January, and the national championship was in April.
Yes, it was.
So you just got used to the weight. You didn't have to cut anymore.
No, I started. It was kind of rough for me. So I moved down in 2004 after I didn't make the Athens Olympic team. You know, I was so focused on beating this girl, this Olympian, Ellen Wilson. And I had just been in judo a few years at that point, but I was a psycho. I was an animal. I would train every day. I would get up at 5 a.m. and I would run, and I would just work so hard and train so hard, and then I would work all day, and then I would train. We would drive an hour and a half to practice, and I just would work as hard as I could. And I was so focused on beating this girl, Ellen, and she had beat me, I think 4 times, maybe 4 or 5 times in a row. And then I finally, about a few months before the trials, I beat her at this big tournament. There's a picture of me, and I'm going, yeah! And that's after I beat her for the first time. So in my mind, I was like, I could do it. Like, I'm going to make the Olympic team. And then this other girl, she wasn't a girl, she was a woman, but this other woman came out of retirement. She was an Olympian. And I just wasn't focused on her. I was so focused on Ellen for 4 years. And just a few weeks before the trials, this other Olympian came out of retirement and wound up beating me at the trials. So it just, I didn't even get a chance to fight Ellen because I was so focused on her that anyway, so I didn't win that trials in 2004. So then I decided, okay, I'm going to move down because this other girl's staying, and the Olympian at 52, which is, we do kilos, so 52 kilos, which is 114, she was retiring, and I was like, I sweat a lot, like, I think I could do it. So I moved down in 2004, and I was number one, right away. I think after 2 or 3 tournaments I won. I was number one in the country, which is really cool for me because I had started judo basically 4 years earlier, just started it, and to me, it's one of the hardest sports in the world. And
So you got your black belt in 4 years?
Yes, yeah, I did.
Wow.
I got it when I was 19. But it was, I don't want to say it was easy. I just was training like a professional athlete. Like, we lived, I'm from Massachusetts, and my dad said, oh, I told him, like, I want to be really good at judo, Dad. And he was like, well, I know this Olympian, his name's Jason Morris, and he is retiring, and he's starting a club, and he lives an hour and a half away in Scotia, New York. So I said, great, like, take me there. And so we made that drive 3 times a week to start. Jason just started his club. I was basically one of his very first members. So we would drive an hour and a half there, practice for 2 hours, then drive an hour and a half home. And then I would have to get up, and I worked at a deli at 6 a.m. So I would get up and go to work all day. And it was hard, but I wanted it. I was training like a professional. And I think after a few months, Jason had this group of kids, myself included, and he saw, like, oh, I have something here, and he changed it to 5 nights a week. And then just shortly after I turned 18, I wound up moving there. I moved to Scotia, New York. So, yeah, I did get my black belt. I think I was already a black belt when I moved there. I know I got it when I was 19, but anyway, yeah, it wasn't like this Herculean feat. It was just like I was training like full time, like a professional athlete.
Yeah, you were putting in a lot of hours in the mat.
Yes, yeah, and then making leaps and just leaps and bounds, these gains. It was good.
From the experience perspective, now that you are a coach, that you sensei and teaching, do you have the same adrenaline? I'm gonna ask this, although I know the answer, but do you have the same adrenaline as you used to have when you were competing, when you are teaching the kick?
Okay, so as you know, if you know me, and I'm kind of a psycho, and I think that I probably have more adrenaline as a coach, and because I'm just so much more into it, because I feel like I can help them, and I'm fighting for them, and we're fighting together. So I'm just like, and then like, there's a lot to deal with when your husband. I say husband, everyone. I'm going to say that this whole podcast. We're not married, but I've been with Nick Del Popolo, who's a 2-time Olympian. He was on Yuri's podcast for 13 years. So I'm going to say husband. So when your husband is a 2-time Olympian, and you yourself were a former world, number one in the U.S. and you're very well known, then you people are kind of always cheering against your kid or wanting your kid to lose, and it's hard because these kids, they didn't do anything and they don't know, and so then I'm even more ramped up because there's that pressure, and then like, so it's difficult, but I would say yes, to answer your question. I think more of a psycho as a coach than I was as an athlete, and I was a pretty big psycho, but I just, in terms of just really wanting it and living and dying with them out there, it's
So
like
does it bring
level.
more fulfillment to you nowadays than when you were younger competing?
It kills me to say yes. But yes, it does. And it's so hard for me because all I ever wanted in my life was to be an Olympian, and I didn't do it. I was an alternate twice, which sounds great to normal people, but when you're so close, it really sucked for me. So like I that's all I wanted, and I knew always that I was going to get into coaching, because before I even retired, I was the one, like I was kind of like the team captain at our club, and I was always like coaching on the side, and in my day when we went to Europe, there wasn't so a lot of times there wasn't a US coach there. So the other studs on the team, these guys, or these Olympians already, they would always ask me to coach them. And I had that same mindset, that same mentality. I was the same Carrie back then. So I knew that I was going to get into coaching when I retired from competing. But I also knew, like, you don't ever want to be, I'm going to be the coach because that's going to be, fulfilling for me because I didn't make it. Like I knew, and it sucked. Like I still wrestle with not.
Well, but the good thing is that
team.
nowadays you can still have this dream of coaching a kid that will make to the Olympics.
Yes.
So that's
Yes.
huge.
Yes. Yeah, and that has replaced my dream. So, Nick and I have just started our very first judo program. It's a judo after school program. So now, we've coached a lot of kids throughout the years, and a lot of adults too, but they've never been ours. Like, we've never coached anyone from zero. And so when we started this after school program, we are coaching these kids that have never done judo. They walked in the door for the first time with us, learn how to tie their belt with us, learn how to, fall with us, learn their first throw. So it's a lot harder than taking someone else's student. If you have a student who goes to a camp, they're already who they are. You're just polishing them, and you're helping them get better, and you're giving them tips. But starting from zero, it's a lot of pressure, and it's so hard, but I really love it. It's so cute. So we, obviously before COVID, we had a super flourishing program. We started in August. I think we had 4 students when we started, and then when we ended, when the shutdown happened in March, we were up to 25, which is huge for us because it just grew so quickly. And this is it's a big commitment for the kids and the parents. It's an after school. It's basically replacing after school daycare. So some kids, their parents work, so they either stay at their school or they get shuttled to like an after school daycare, and they're there until 6 p.m. when their parents pick them up. So we're replacing that. Like, our big thing is like, say no to daycare, say yes to judo. So we have a judo van, and we take them up at the schools at 3 p.m. and we take them to the dojo, and their parents pick them up at the dojo at 6 p.m. But I'm getting carried away. But anyway, so these kids that we've been coaching, they started at zero, and they started competing with us, and a bunch of them are winning gold medals, and it's just really cute, and it's so fulfilling, and it's just nothing could really top that. I get a lot out of that.
With
it
all your
means a lot.
experience as an athlete, competing internationally, meeting a lot of people, and now coaching, what are some of the attributes that you see for a successful judoka to make through the ranks. I mean, there is a lot of things that they have to overcome. They have
Yeah.
to have a discipline, but there are also some mindset and mental toughness going on, right? So, what do you think is more important to succeed?
So I think to succeed on an international level, like you said, the hard work, doing all that just you have to have that. Like before you even start competing, you already have to be someone who knows how to work hard, who's going to get up at 6 a.m. or stay late, do that extra round. You already should have that if you're going to start competing on the IJF World Tour. What I think that a lot of these kids and parents don't know that they're signing up for, and what they truly have to overcome is the part where you're in France by yourself and you show up. Maybe France really has it together, so maybe they're a poor example. Maybe you show up to Uzbekistan or something and there's no one there to pick you up at the airport, okay, and you're by yourself and the other teams, and there's no coach, and so you have to know, like, oh my God, what do I do? And you call USA Judo, but it's 2 a.m. and no one can help you, and that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, because we are a sport that is self-funded, we don't have a team of coaches and managers and staff that takes care of all that for you. So you could literally be by yourself in another country. Of course, you don't speak the language. There's no one there, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning. How do you get to your hotel? And that kind of stuff. It's like people are not used to that, and they have panic attacks. And I've gotten so many middle of the night messages from athletes. Oh my God, we're in China. They dropped me at the wrong hotel. What do I do? And it's just really. It gives you anxiety. It's something that you have to know how to handle. And then, so going further, when you're at the tournament, if you have a problem, and not to say that there's not a coach at every tournament, but quite frequently you will be at a tournament by yourself with no coach. Yes, maybe some other competitors will be there, but you have to also figure out, like, well, how am I going to, no one's going to help you if you get a bad call. Okay. It's very difficult. People give, how come you have such great judo and you don't win? And he's like, man, you don't know what it's like being by yourself out there. You're fighting one of the best guys in the world, and in his chair is an Olympic champ. So maybe you're fighting an Olympic champ and he's being coached by an Olympic champ, and in the back room he's got a doctor who's a master of sport and a psychologist and all of this stuff, and it's just you, and you're broke and you're tired and your card got declined and nobody picked you up at the airport, and you have to get yourself ready mentally to overcome all of that. And I think that is what really that grind is, something that is not for everyone. A lot of people can't do it, and a lot of kids, they start off hot, and once you get on the world tour, it's so unforgiving. So you have to be able to grind through all that. And then sometimes you're just hoping sometimes that's happening and you're injured, or you get injured at a training camp and there's no one there. There's no Americans to help you. Maybe you're buddies with a Canadian. When I was competing, we were very good friends with the Canadians, and so their doctor thankfully would help me out quite a bit. But it's just, our coach would always tell us, if there's no one around and you need help, go to the Japanese team. Like, the Japanese team will help you, and that's true, they would. So it's like, it's a good community, but it's tough. It's tough. Those kind of things,
for sure.
It's very difficult, and a lot of people aren't ready to do that, or not. It's not. Maybe not. That's not the right word. Not ready to do it. They're just kind of blown away.
It's a new experience for them, right? So they probably never were exposed to such a situation, so they don't know what to do exactly.
Yeah.
Now going back
exactly.
to let's say, you probably seen some good talent people, athletes that started, but they were not able to make to the next level. Do you draw any type of pattern around these people that were not able to make the next level? What they were missing?
Yeah, I'll tell you right now, they were missing money. And it's true. It's another hard thing is when you're signing up to be a U.S. Judo athlete, is that these trips that we go on, so hardly anyone is funded. Even when you make it, if you get injured, so Nick has been fully funded at sometimes, and then sometimes not funded at all. And even when you make it and you're an Olympian like Nick, they are funding 4 or 5 people, and if you get injured or your ranking slips a little bit, they might not fund you for the next one. Now you got to come up with $5,000. Oh, and then there's another tournament in 3 weeks. That's $4,000. And there's one 2 weeks after that. That's $2,000. So if you don't have rich, wealthy parents, or if you're not well off yourself, you have to work and come up with that. You know, one of my good friends on the team is Nina Kutro-Kelly. She's our #1 heavyweight. She works. No one helps her financially. She works all by herself, and she puts in like 70-hour weeks and then still has to train. And it's really a labor of love and to compete. So I've seen a ton of talented kids. I would even go so far as to say, we're not always fielding the most talented team. We're fielding the people who can make it through, or they're in the right clubs, or with the right connections, with the right sponsors. They have psycho parents or girlfriends like myself who will, you know, beat that drum and get sponsorships for you. And this is a year-round full-time gig. I mean, it costs about, I would say, at least $50,000, probably sometimes closer to $80,000 a year just for the tournament expenses, if you want to compete enough that you're putting yourself in Olympic, making an Olympic team potential. So, like, yes, obviously everybody can just, you know, go on a one-off, or go on the South American tour, which is a popular thing for some of our athletes. Is there's 3 tournaments in April that are kind of easier, and so a lot of people go on the South American tour, but it doesn't put you on the Olympic team, and it's ultimately kind of a waste of money. You need to be ready to compete 10 to 12 times a year at the biggest events. And then on top of that, go to 4 to 6 training camps. So you're abroad 16, 18 times a year. And each one of those trips is probably going to cost you $3,000. And then you've got all your bills to pay at home. So I would say that what's stopping these kids from coming down the pipeline is definitely financial, because you have super talented kids, but a lot of them are underprivileged youth that there's just no way that they can come up with $80,000 a year to compete, you know, like both. I would say that's the #1 problem, in my opinion. That's the #1 issue that all athletes are going to run into. And you have to know that going in. And if you know that going in, you can make a plan. I used to complain and say, like, oh, it's USA Judo should be getting this money for us, and we should do this and we should do that. And it is what it is. It's not happening. It's been years. I retired 12 years ago. This was an issue when I was competing, and that it was an issue the whole time I was competing. So I was competing for 10 years. So it's like, this is not going to stop. It's not going to go away. So you basically have to take that on. You have to crowdfund, or, you know, fortunately for Nick, he's built up such a base over the years. He does a lot of clinics and camps, and he's always working, always hustling, and making that money so that he's never missed a tournament, which is something I'm really proud of. He's never missed a tournament, and it's because we're always figuring it out, or just crowdfunding. We just owe a lot to our friends and family in the judo community, because I think GoFundMe and PayPal and all these things, it's like the best thing since sliced bread. That's the best thing to happen to athletes, because it's so hard to find one person to give you $3,000, but, you know, it's not as hard to find 30 people to give you $100, you know, so it's easier to, especially if you get experience, and then you build up a good group of sponsors. So I think that is, it's huge, and that's something that all of our kids coming up.
You touch on one of the points that I always concern myself, mainly because of what happened to me. You said if you get injury during a competition, there is no one there for you. Have you ever got injury during a competition that you had to walk away from the match because you just couldn't continue?
No, but I've had injuries at a tournament. Like, I was at this tournament, the Fall Classic, once, and I was really good on the ground, and so I did this move called Sankaku. It's like a leg triangle, and I think a lot of this had to do with cutting weight. My legs were so tight, but I think my bones and everything, I was so dry. When I climbed up, I like blew my own knee out, and it hurt so bad, and like the medics came on. I knew I blew it out because I had blown it out before. And so I got up and I finished the match, and I beat the girl. I threw her for a point. I mean, I was crying, hysterically crying. But I finished that match, and then I pulled out of the tournament, so I couldn't continue. A funny story is that happened to me the very first time I fought 52 kilos. Same thing. I had just come off a knee injury. I was really fragile during my career, and I think it's because I started judo so late. I was 16, 17 when I started. So I didn't have those years of muscle memory, and I like to say like I was like a librarian trapped in an athlete's body. You know, I was just like so fragile. But so my very first tournament making 52, I was fighting this young girl and I blew my knee out and I lost to this girl. And then I had to fight all the way back through. And here I am thinking like, oh, I'm gonna move down and I am going to crush it. I'm gonna be number one. Blah blah blah. I lost to this 14-year-old girl, my very first match at 52, blew my knee out. I come all the way back. I have to fight this 14-year-old girl twice in the finals. I beat her. I mean, it was a war. I think I choked her. She didn't tap. She went unconscious. Well, that girl was Kayla Harrison.
Wow.
Who's our obviously Olympic champion. But so yeah, that was that part of it though. But that was a funny injury story for me because it was Kayla.
Did you ever fix that knee or?
Yeah, I had a total reconstruction, ACL reconstruction on my right knee, and then my left knee I didn't. But I'm pretty sure I did the same thing. It was my left knee, and then I have like Baker cysts in the back that they're always filling up, and I would get them drained, which is just so awful because they drain it through the kneecap. It's just this big needle. It's just terrible. But I only had one knee surgery. The other ones I would just...
Did you do the surgery during your competitive years or after you retire?
Yeah, I did it during my... I did it. It was funny. I did it, and then I made my first junior world team. So I was 19 when I had this first surgery. The only knee surgery I've had.
How long were you off because of the surgery?
It was 6 months. And... ultimately, that's why I didn't fix my other knees is because I just didn't have time. Time wasn't on my side. I always felt like I was a little older getting into the game, and I just was injured all the time. And if you want to fix these things, it takes months at a time. However, I was wrong. Like my shoulder would come out. It's come out of the socket probably 60 times, and I would pull it back in, and I would keep fighting, and I would keep going. And then ultimately, when I had this surgery, when you have a shoulder surgery, you're just you can't see, but you're just supposed to get these like little scopes. And I went in and I got this I woke up. It was supposed to be an hour and a half. I woke up. It was a 6.5 hour surgery. I think I'm in a medical book. Wow. They basically said that my socket had, because it came out so many times, every time I would put it in, a little bit would chip out, and so my socket I had chipped away half. So it was like they said it's like having a bowl and then take away half the bowl, and there's a tennis ball, which is a socket, where your shoulder just keeps falling out because it's in half a bowl. So they had to totally reconstruct my socket, and then I had a torn labrum and just a bunch of stuff. And that was pretty much the end of my career. That was in the middle of my Olympic run.
And was 2008?
No, that was 2007, June of 2007, but I was 52, and so the way you qualified for the Olympics in my day, the way you qualified was through the Pan Am Union. And so, mind you, I was Pan Am champion. I won the Pan Ams at 52 kilos, and I was in the quarters of the French Open and the Czech Open and the Dutch Open, everything. I was doing very well at 52. I was number 9 in the world. They had the same world ranking list that they have now. It just wasn't official. So I was top 10 in the world. And then I had to get this surgery, and the girl under me who had to qualify the division at the Pan Ams, and she didn't qualify. And so then when I came back, unfortunately, I thought, okay, there's no way for me to make it at 114, this category that I cut down to that I've been suffering at for the last 3 years. So I moved up to 50 with just a few months before the trials. I fought at a couple tournaments, the U.S. Open and the Rendezvous. I did very well. I medaled at both, and I got myself up to, I was ranked number 2 in the country at 57 just after a few tournaments.
You did had one tournament as a 63. I'm looking at here.
Yeah, that was the Morris Cup. That's our home tournament, so I just didn't. I fought a few times at 63, but that was it was just a really small tournament. That was our home tournament, so it's like we put down the mats, we're like cooked all the food that they were selling, we're reffing, and then we're like fighting later in the day. So like also you could enter in multiple divisions. So I think my coach just made me fight up, or I was already too heavy to fight.
Was that competition after the surgery?
Was that in 07?
Yeah, 08 actually.
Oh, 08, yes. So I had my surgery in June of '07, and it was supposed to be, so it's supposed to take you out for a year. It's a year surgery. And like I said, the way you qualify for the Olympics was through the Pan Ams or at the World Championship. So they said, this is going to take a year. And so after 3 months, the World Championships were in 3 months. So I told my coach, like, I'm going to fight in that tournament, and I'm going to try to do something crazy, and I'm going to try to make the Olympic team to qualify the weight at 52. So I fought in Rio de Janeiro at the World Championships. Was my last ever tournament at 52, and I fought 3 months after I had a total
That's
shoulder
crazy.
replacement. You know,
Wow.
I say that. I say that, and people like my doctor friends are like, "Oh no, you didn't have a shoulder replacement. Like you tore a ligament." And I'm like, "No. I had a total shoulder replacement. They reconstructed my shoulder."
How did you do that? I mean, did you? That's crazy.
Just a really strong mind. I have a really strong mind. I had a strong mind. I really just.
Did you feel any pain for the?
No, because to be honest, it felt so good because it was back in. But it was the pain. The pain and the suffering was in the weight cutting. And I went down there to Brazil, and I think I actually fought. So USA Judo, they found out like, oh, she's gonna fight at the Worlds, and they said to my coach like, hey, we know she had this big surgery where she's going to have to prove that she's ready. Like, she can't just go fight at the Worlds. Like, people were, like, talking. And long story short, I had a fight at this tournament called the Fall Classic. I think 10 weeks after. It was 2 weeks before the Worlds, after this shoulder surgery, just to prove that I could fight. And so, like, I fought 57 kilos, and I think I ended up losing, and I was, like, devastated. I got second. And I feel like I kind of got screwed. Whatever. I lost to some girl. Her dad's a ref. And anyway, I was like, oh, they're all gonna say they beat me. Whatever. My coach was like, Carrie, you got off a gurney and fought in this tournament.
That
like,
was a huge accomplishment after only 10 weeks.
Yeah,
the question is, were you actually training?
It really was.
Were you training?
No, I wasn't training. I mean, you could do. I was in a gi and I would do uchikomi. So I would do uchikomi, but obviously, as you know, as a judoka, there's only so much uchikomi you can do, but I wasn't during just a few weeks at the end. So like for the first 8 weeks, probably nothing, running, a lot of running. And even that, I think I had to wait a month. So the graft was tight. So no, I was hardly training. I just did a lot of training at the end. And I have a really, really strong mind, and I just put my mind to it. And unfortunately, it didn't pay off because I fought at the Worlds and I lost. I lost to Italy.
Well, I think it did pay off
girl,
because you were able to experience that, and that's huge. And you got second place. So I know that you want to win, but that was a big victory in my book.
Yeah, mentally. So now, like at the time, I was just devastated and crushed, and it like just molded a lot. It just gave me a lot of nightmares, and like even still, it's just stuff that I deal with. But now that I'm 39 years old and I'm not 26, it's I can see it's made me who I am, and it's made me so tough. And a lot of stuff that I've gone through with Nick, or just with USA Judo, whoever, any problems I've had, I just have this like iron trap of a mind. Like I am just so confident that no one's gonna like get the best of me in life, or just in a bad situation. No one's gonna like put me somewhere I don't want to be. And I think looking back now, it's like, yes, that's why I can overcome anything. Like, for example, COVID shutting down our business, that we just started. I know we're going to be fine, and a lot of that has to do with my strong mind. Also,
you are extremely positive as well. I've noticed that.
Yeah. I try to stay positive because it's like, what good is it going to do? You're in it. So like if you're crying and feeling sorry for yourself, like it doesn't matter. Like you're in it. So I do a lot of self-talk, and it's like it's just easier to get through things with a good attitude than it is with a bad attitude, because you're going to go through it anyway. So that's what I would say. That's what I say to my kids when they're afraid to fight, or that's what I would say to myself when I would self-talk when I was afraid to fight. I would be like, look, you're going out there anyway. Okay, scared or not scared, we're here, and you're walking out there. So you have to walk out with a strong mind because you're going out anyway. It would be one thing if you could say, oh no, we're going to not do this, we're going to quit, we're going to run away and hide in our closet for the rest of our life. But you're not. We're here, you're up next, and you're walking out there. So get your mind right, and like it helps the kids, and it would help me too.
What did you do if you remember back then on the first month that you couldn't do anything? Did you just stay quiet, or were you already planning what to do next? or for the
For
shoulder?
for my
Yes.
rehab, you mean? I think gosh, I remember that first month I was really supposed to do like nothing because it's like your graph's in there and it has to like tighten up. But I would I would think
the only
I got
reason I
on the
asked this is
bike.
because I don't see you stopping. So
No, I think I got on the bike like not the upright bike where you're sitting and your feet are like in front of you. I think I did a lot of biking. I mean, it was so. I remember it was just. If you've ever had shoulder surgery, it's one of the most painful things. Like I'm tough. I have a really high pain tolerance, and the shoulder surgery, not even it going out of the socket, which is also awful, but the surgery, it's excruciating. I mean, and I just woke up in pain, and I could feel like, and it was just so awful. Those first few weeks, I think I was just in so much pain. I had a drip that I had to wear around my neck, and they put it in my arm, and it was like a pain blocker, a drip, but it kept you nauseous 22 hours out of the day, but it helped with the pain. So I pulled it out, and it was because I couldn't deal. I hate nausea. I'm like not a nausea person. So I think I kept it in a few days, and then I was like, I can't do this. I can't do it. I can't eat. I can't look. I'm nauseous all the time. So I like pulled it out. It was like this cord was 3 feet long. It was anyway. I
wow.
was in so much pain that first few weeks. I don't think I did much. I think I did the bike.
But
But that was
in
it. But then
in
like
any moment you got into that dark place of depression or none of that.
no, no. I think after my career, so like this happens. The me trying to qualify at 52. This happens. My last tournament was the Worlds in, I think it was September of '07. And then right away I knew, oh, okay, the division's not qualified. So all my hard work, moving down, cutting all that weight, like sacrifice, all that was gone. Just out the window, gone. And I knew it. And then in October, there's 2 tournaments to get me qualified. You have to be in the top 8 in the country to make the Olympic trials. So I know, well, 57 is qualified. That's the 125, the next category up. So I know already in Rio de Janeiro, I knew. I mean, I felt sorry for myself a little bit. You know, I am having a caipirinha on the beach, feeling a little sorry for myself that night. But I knew in Rio, like I knew. I think I was looking out at the ocean on my balcony. I knew, like, okay, we gotta go. Like, let's go. I gotta fight 57. I gotta do good at these next 2 tournaments. That could be my only chance. And so I already knew, like, okay, on to the next. And so I fought in the U.S. Open and the Rendezvous, and I medaled at both those tournaments, and I was number 2 in the country at 57. So then right away I was like, okay, like now I gotta try to beat this girl that I can't beat. This Olympian, Valerie Gote. I gotta beat her. Try to make my first Olympic team. Try to do it. Like hopefully this will all be worth it. And unfortunately, it did not work out for me. But I went to the trials, and I thought I was gonna fight my teammate first round the whole time. My teammate Hannah Martin, great girl. I just always beat her. I beat her 5 times, and I thought, like, okay, I'm gonna have to fight Hannah. I'll beat her, and then I'm gonna have to fight Marty Malloy in the semi. I'll beat her, and then I'm gonna have to beat Val. And then something happened with one of the girls got injured, so they take the top 8, and I was number 2, and 2 fights 7 first round. So one of the girls got injured, the number 6 girl, and then all of a sudden Marty moved to number 7, and I wasn't gonna fight my teammate Hannah first round anymore. Now I had to fight Marty Malloy. And I knew this. I think I found out like a week or 2, maybe even just a week before the trials. Okay, crap, now I'm gonna have to fight Marty first round. So like I showed up at the tournament, and I beat Marty, and I was in the semifinal with my teammate Hannah Martin, who I was so sure, it's such a bad thing to say, like I just was sure I was gonna beat her. So I kind of was like, all right, how am I gonna beat Val in the final? And I unfortunately, that's not how sports works, and Hannah had other plans, and she promptly threw me for Ippon in the semifinal, and that was it. Then I was retired. So it didn't work out for me there.
If you had to compare the knee surgery with this shoulder, do you think that the recovery for the shoulder was worse or the knee?
So I honestly the knee was more traumatic for me because it was my first major surgery. The shoulder surgery was a much more extensive surgery. It was a much bigger deal, but I was already a professional athlete at that time, and I was already ready to take that on, and I was Carrie, I had my strong mind. But when the knee happened to me, it was 99, and I had only been in judo about 6 months, and I knew I wanted to make the 2000 junior world team, so I was just devastated. Like, I remember the doctor calling me to tell me that my ACL was torn. I got an MRI, and the doctor called me, and I hung up on him when he told me my ACL was torn, and I was just crying, and it was so dramatic. Like, I was like, I told my dad back then, I said, like, oh, I'm gonna become a physical therapist. I think for a short time I wanted to become a physical therapist or a sports psychologist because of the trauma of that, of the knee injury. So it was worse for me because I was not as prepared, and I was just a kid who started judo 6 months ago, and I didn't realize, like, hey, suck it up, baby. This is part of sports. Injuries are part of sports. So it was a really dramatic.
And since it was so traumatic, how was your comeback? Did you hesitate in using that leg very much? Did you change your game or anything?
No. So I think before it happened, I was a little more fearless, and then once I came back, my coach. ACL is a very common injury in sports, and my coach, Terry Takamori, she's one of my coaches. She had, I think, double ACL surgeries, and so they really prepared me, and they already had me doing uchikomis at 3 months, 4 months. I was doing uchikomis, and then my therapist was like, okay, my physical therapist, she was like, what do you need to do? And I'm like, I'm worried about twisting and jerking. So my last several weeks, she had me like twisting and jerking with weighted balls, and I was really confident in the knee. I was really confident when I came back, and it was like, it was just like time didn't really pass for me. I remember I was so worried that I wasn't going to make the junior world team, and I had to win the collegiate nationals when I came back, and I think that was my first tournament, and I did. I won it. So I won it, and I won the collegiate nationals to make me the #1 junior, and then, like, they didn't pick the team till later in the summer, but winning the collegiate nationals was huge for me. And I won that, and then I ended up making the team later on in the summer. So it was like, it wasn't that hard physically. I think just mentally, I wasn't prepared for.
And you touched another important point, and I've seen you talking about this the other day when you watched that documentary about gold medal. You're talking about mental health, which is a pretty big deal because there's so much pressure on athletes. And I see that you always wanted the gold, and everyone wants the gold, and it feels like even if you get second or third, it's almost like nothing.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's so hard. Like, I can't even. Just so you know, I never talk about my career. So, like, this thing is probably the second time I've ever talked about this stuff. So it's that hard. It's that hard, and it's so hard for me, and especially because, like, once you retire, now I've retired 12 years ago, so people don't remember. They don't know how hard you work. They don't. So there's kids now, they'll fight, and anybody can just sign up and fight on the IJF World Tour. So these kids will fight in 1 or 2 tournaments, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, I could have been an Olympian, and now they don't. It's very irritating. So they don't. It's just not the same. So I don't like to talk about it because everybody says it. Everybody says it. Whoever fights at one tournament, and they don't really know. Like, how close you were. Like, now, after I retired in 2008, they changed the points system, and instead of qualifying through the Pan Am Union, which kept me off the team, they then switched it that you could qualify on the world ranking list. And for women, they took the top first they took the top 14 in the world to go to London, and then now in Rio they took the top 18, and again they'll take the top 18. So I was number 9 in the world. So here, it's just so frustrating to me because I retired and then they changed the rule, and I would have qualified for the Olympics of my world rank by my own merit, and so it's difficult. Like, it's really hard to.
But when you are coaching, do you ever talk to the kids or even teenagers that are competing for them to do their best? I know that you push for the gold, but just to be happy to accomplish something, or don't put in a lot of pressure. I think, right?
I totally don't put pressure. I don't think it's fair to say, like, well, you have to win the gold, because there's there's levels to this. So sure, if you're fighting someone who like you always beat, and yes, there, and maybe it's for the gold, then maybe there's that pressure. But I don't like, that's not the way I coach. I wouldn't say something like that, because that's immediately kind of setting off
Yep.
anxiety in their mind, and that's probably all they would focus on, is that kind of stuff. And I don't really think I don't know too many coaches, honestly, that say that, like, you have to win the gold. Or, I think the pressure, the mental health pressure, it comes from the pressure you put on yourself, unfortunately. And I know that pressure. I've never really dealt with suicidal thoughts or anything. That's just not something I've dealt with. But I have dealt with depression, and I know what depression feels like, and it sucks, and it's a hard beast. But I think that a lot of that is self-induced. It's the pressure you put on yourself because you're projecting this thing to like your inner circle, oh, I'm this person. And then you come home from a tournament, and here you are, like, if you're fighting for a national title, for example, and you get second, of course, that second at a national championship is a huge accomplishment. But when you go home and you go, I used to work at Hannaford, and you go back to Hannaford, and you're in the deli, and Bonnie from the deli says to you, hey, how'd you do? And you say, I got second. And they go, oh, next time. And it's like that kind of pressure. It's really dealing with that. And then having to not want to explain to you, oh, no, this is a big deal. I'm a badass. Like it's that kind of puts pressure on you. And then you start, like, that could eat at you. Or, oh, somebody gave me all this money to go on this trip. And then you think, like, oh my God, I missed weight, or I didn't fight good. How can I look at this person in the face? I let that down. I think it's a lot of self-pressure that you put on yourself, and it's hard.
How do we manage that? How do you have any tips to manage this type of pressure?
Yeah, so I think that coaches and athletes should be checking in before this is happening, because especially if you're a coach, you were a former athlete, you felt those pressures, so the athletes are feeling those pressures. So even if someone's happy-go-lucky and they're seeming outwardly okay, you have to know, like, what, I was outwardly that way and I struggled. So you still have to be checking in, and I think you have to be telling these kids, like, hey, this isn't your whole life. This isn't you. Okay. This isn't your window to do sports is so small. We have a kid, one of these girls that I coach, she wants to be a doctor, so I can tell you right now, if it was Jada, her name's Jada, if it was Jada that I was having this conversation with, I would tell her, like, Jada, the sports person isn't going to be the rest of your life. Jada, the doctor, is going to be the rest of your life. So you can't put, oh, my whole life matters. Sports is my whole life. It has to be like, no, sports is this tiny window of your youth. That's all it is. Sports is a window of your youth, and the rest of your life and what you invest your time in is who you are, is who you're going to be for the rest of your life. You're going to be a doctor for 50 years and an athlete for
well, yeah, unless you are dealing with someone that wants to live for judo the rest of their life.
Yeah, but you can't, you got to retire it. Father Time gets us all. Like, you got to, unless, of course, if you want to open a dojo or something, yes. But I mean, it's just, I think that something that these coaches can be doing is just checking in more, being more available. Unfortunately, with suicide, it's such a hard thing because everybody is usually blown away about, they can't believe it. And we lost a kid that nobody expected would kill himself. And I watched that The Weight of Gold documentary, and there was I don't want to get this wrong, some kind of winter sport guy. I think it was a bobsledder. Sorry if it's wrong, but his best friend had no idea, and they were like two peas in a pod. She was also an Olympian, and he was an Olympian, and our kid Jack that killed himself, he was going to be on this Olympic team for sure. And so that just shows you that it doesn't matter if you're already an Olympian or you're about to be an Olympian. That mental health is bigger than that, and that depression that they're feeling is bigger than, they're not thinking like, oh, well, I'm going to be an Olympian, nothing's wrong in my life. It's got to be, so we have to be checking in, I think, on more kids, and we have all these outlets, and the USOC has, since this Michael Phelps movie came out, I think they've have like big pushes on like, oh, there's all these outlets, there's all this. But it's really like, I think it really comes down to the people checking in with you that you surround yourself with. And then also I think like having something else besides judo that you're good at. That's another or another goal, knowing like, okay, whether or not this small portion of my life doesn't work out, I know, like I've always wanted to own a judo club. I've always wanted to have a club. I wanted to have one since I was like 16 years old. So I know that that's what I wanted to do for a living. So when I didn't make it, I didn't think like, oh my God, my life is over, da da da. It was hard, and believe me, there's still some nights where it's hard, and I think about it like, gosh, blah. But like I knew I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to try to change these other kids' lives, and so I just knew that was there for me. And I can't speak to what someone who's suicidal is thinking, but I don't know. I hope they have a thought process of like, oh, okay, there's something else for
they
me.
need to think about a roadmap, and understand that the sport, as you said, is just a period of time. And even if they want to live with sport, for example, for coach or anything, they need to have this roadmap and have clarity on this. So very important.
Yeah. And already be getting your coaching certifications, and already, you know what I mean? Like, be taking action steps toward your
that's
your
amazing. That's a very important aspect, mental health, not only for professional athletes, but I would say to also amateurs athletes.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Anyone. I mean, there's so much pressure. Like, if you watch these sports shows, like Nick watches this show called like Friday Night Tykes, and it's about these little kids playing football in Texas, and I think they're like 8, and these kids have pressure on themselves, and it's like, it doesn't matter. They might not go to the NFL. They're 8 years old, but it's just the pressure. I think it doesn't matter, pressure or those thoughts aren't just reserved for Olympians or professional athletes. I think everybody has those thoughts, and I just think like,
it's interesting because I was talking to Isis, my daughter, yesterday about competing, when is going to be her next competition, jiu-jitsu. And she was like, well, I don't think I want to compete right now. And I started to dig to understand the why. And the why was, she said, well, I'm going to say I'm afraid to lose. And I was like, well, it's going to happen. You cannot lose yourself, because if you don't compete because you are afraid of losing it,
then you've lost. If you don't compete, you've lost. So if you're afraid of losing, and that's why you don't compete, you have lost. I think that that's very common. Like, how old is she? Yeah, I mean, I coach a bunch of kids that same age, and it's common. My kids, they don't want to compete, but I say that's how you test yourself. That's how you know that your training's paying off, and that's how we know what to adjust. So yeah, everybody can look good in practice, but we don't know what we've got to fix, because we don't know what's not going to go right for you, or what habits, this and that. That's super common. Usually after a couple competitions, that goes away.
I told her it's a great way to learn. It's a great way for you to, because some people, they are really good at randori on their own gym, but then when they go to a competition, they freeze.
Oh, I can tell you firsthand. So Nick, he always gets crushed in practice. Not crushed, but he gets thrown almost every single night. And this is no matter what club we're at, no matter where we're at, he gets thrown almost every single night. And he is probably one of the hardest people to score on in the world. Like when you get to a tournament, and all these people are like, oh, what's up with Nick sucks? Like he gets scored on all the time. And I'm like, practice, baby. That doesn't mean anything. Like it matters when you're out there, when you're competing.
So he is the opposite.
I mean, I think
he's
the opposite. Yeah, he's always has a bad practice, or I wouldn't even say it's bad. I don't think getting thrown is bad. I think that if you are competing in practice, that's a problem, because you're not putting yourself up out there. And so we used to have this
You're
saying,
not exposing yourself.
You're not exposing yourself, so you're playing safe, and now you're not getting better. And so Nick and I used to say this thing for a while to our kids. We would say counters don't count. Counters don't count in practice. And the reason why counters don't count in practice is because it means the other guy's attacking. Okay, so if you're just countering someone, you're waiting to counter, that means they're working, they're attacking, they're getting better, and they're figuring it out. So
That's a great
anyway.
point. That's a great point.
You
Yeah,
gotta
because if
test
he gets thrown more, it's
Yeah.
because he is exposing, trying new things, and which
Exactly.
is good.
Yes,
Which is
exactly
good.
right.
And mainly
Yes.
according to the new judo rules that you have to be attacking all the time. Very important to practice attack.
Yes. Yes. That's what they want now. Is they want you just nonstop attacking. You just gotta like run out there and try to lift everybody up
Yeah.
every exchange.
Well, you have a lot of stories to tell. We could go for hours and hours, but we are approaching the end here. I just want to say thank you very much, Carrie. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much, Yuri. The hour flew
Your
by for me.
example of competing after 10 weeks shoulder surgery is mind blowing. I'm shocked here. I'm I'm like, oh,
Thank
wow,
you.
that's incredible. Uh,
I wish you could go back in time and beat that Italian girl for me, but but yeah, I'm just kidding. No, I know that this whole podcast is about overcoming, and I've overcome a lot in my life, and I think that as a result, I'm a good coach, I'm a good girlfriend, I'm a good person, and it's just how you overcome things.
yeah,
I think
it
helps
helped
you in
to
life.
build
So
the
I
Carrie
think
that
it's
we
really,
all know today. Strong character,
yes,
strong
yes,
mindset,
exactly,
mental toughness. I mean,
yes.
nowadays you are probably way more indestructible mentally than you were when you started.
Yes, I would definitely
All
agree.
right, my friend. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Yuri.
All right,
Awesome.
take
Thanks
care.
so
Bye bye.
much. Bye bye.